So how can we do actions that are compounding so that the more we do it, the more we're going to get out of it, right? And so if we think about the job search, it really simplifies down to two things.
Welcome to the Junior Jobs Podcast, where we give new software engineers actionable job search advice relevant to today's job market. In today's expert interview, I'm talking with Matthew Sevey, the founder of My Code Career. My Code Career is a software career coaching company that specializes in helping software engineers land their dream job 3 times faster without begging for referrals or sending thousands of applications. And today, Matthew and his team are offering a free job search strategy session to all podcast listeners. These are private one-on-one calls with a member of his team where they'll dig into what's working for you and what's not. And for those that are looking for additional support in their job search, all podcast listeners also get 10% off their coaching services when booked through the link in this episode's show notes. So check it out to get started. All right, Matthew, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks. Happy to be here.
Happy to have you. So one complaint I often hear from developers trying to break into tech is how overwhelmed they are trying to do everything. I mean, you have the job applications you need to be applying to every day. You have the email responses you need to be responding to. You need to be attending networking events or posting on LinkedIn or contacting recruiters and hiring managers, all while also needing to work on your portfolio and keep up learning new skills. And this is oftentimes also on top of already working a full-time job or supporting a family. So I'm hoping this episode can bring some relief to our listeners about how some of these job search activities can be automated to hopefully save them some time and ultimately some sanity. So let's start there, Matt. What thoughts do you have on how to automate the job search?
Yeah. So I think the idea of automating the job search or automating everything is something that's always on top of people's minds, especially with the rise of AI and all these new tools that do all these things. And I think a counter belief that I actually hold is how, instead of trying to automate all these tasks so you can do more and more and more, is how do we actually first simplify and figure out like what are actually the things that are moving us forward in this job search or otherwise, right? And so there's so much information out there in terms of what you can do to find a job, how to break into tech, especially as a new developer trying to land their first job. And everyone that you talk to typically has a slightly different opinion. So they give you slightly different advice. And that just kind of builds and builds and builds and builds and builds and builds in terms of the amount of things that you could be doing, should be doing, need to be doing, all these things. Right. And so the first step I always talk to people about is like, taking a step back and figuring out like what stage you're in to then identify like what is that top priority for where you are, right? So early on, right, if you're still just learning to tech, right, or learning to code, the priority is the learning piece, right? Figuring out what you're doing, how to do it so that you can then have a clear picture of what you need to continue to do and what you need to learn to then turn that into the types of jobs that you want, right? And so not over stressing about, oh, well, like I haven't done XYZ that I know I should be doing if I want to land a job. But if you're still like figuring out how to put together HTML and CSS to put together for a website, or like, I don't even know how to build a full stack application, it's like, slow down a little bit, just, you know, enjoy the stage that you're at. Right. And, the age old saying of, to go slow to go fast. Right. So like slow down, can I figure out what you're doing? So then when we get to the job search stage, right, we can then transition to the priority is obviously landing a job and kind of working back from that in terms of like what are all the things that need to be in place in order for you to land a job. And all the advice that is out there, it's not that it's some advice is wrong or some advice is, better, it's all situationally dependent, right? There's a lot of things that you can do that could help you in your job search, right? And typically you just have to like commit to one way and then do that, right? As opposed to doing 15 different things kind of well, right? Doing one thing really well is often going to get you results a lot faster, right?
I think
And
a lot of it is, trying to determine what fits best with your personality. Maybe you're more introverted and like the networking aspect is intimidating for you. So you try to find an alternative that fits more with kind of your personality. Is
yeah,
that what you're saying?
yeah, exactly. And figuring out if you took the time early on to focus on like what did you really enjoy doing to hopefully that crystallizes a clear career path for yourself, saying which one of these fits the best in terms of the career that I'm trying to achieve, right? So
Mhm.
to kind of tie in the introvert piece with potentially a career path like in blockchain or Web3, that's a great example where, really focusing on just exploring the open source software community on GitHub and finding projects and contributing, joining Discord groups and like learning the technology, building the technology, and just finding people that are excited about what you're doing, right? That is a form of networking, but in a very organic way where you're just excited about what you're building and learning and finding other people that are doing the same thing. And I don't know how many people I know that like that is how they got jobs, right? Because
Mhm.
they found this new technology, they got excited about it, they focused on that, nothing else, and then that naturally creates opportunities, creates ways for you to land interviews, join teams, work on projects, and make that transition.
And that's one of the hard things too, right? Where I feel like a lot of boot camp grads are just we're all applying to the same roles, the generic, software engineer title. Most of them are full stack graduates, typically of some sort of JavaScript based tech stack. But you're right. If you could find, blockchain, Web3, mobile, data science, some machine learning, some, alternative path, there might be less competition there. And it might be something that you enjoy more of. So the hard thing though, when you're starting off is you don't know what you don't know, right? You don't know what all the career options are. So any thoughts for how a developer can kind of find what their interest and their passion is there?
Yeah. So glad you asked that question.
Oh yeah.
So the first thing I'll say that we can come back to is what you said about people that are most people coming out of boot camp, full stack, they have this mindset of I'll take anything, right? And while that's a great mindset in terms of being grateful for the opportunity that you might be presented, it's a terrible strategy. And so we can come back to that. So digging into how do we figure out what we actually want so we can have a better strategy is coming back to that learning phase, right? Of going slow to go fast, right? So I think one of the second order consequences of boot camps has been people trying to learn code too quickly. And when the goal is to land a job before you even have written your first line of code, it puts a different focus in terms of getting through the material. And I think it can have a negative impact and get people in the place of, I'm just open to anything. Like I'm trying to move quickly. I'm just trying to find my first job, but I don't really know what I want to do. I don't really know what I like because I've been doing this for 6 months and I just need a job now. Right. Versus approaching it from, you know, wanting to enjoy what you do and figuring out what that means for you. Right. So when you're learning to code, instead of doing the kind of traditional, I'll learn HTML, CSS, JavaScript, I'll make a clone of Twitter, and then I'll, make a clone of Etsy, and then I'll find an API to connect, and like now I'm done, right? Thinking, okay, there's some like fundamental stuff that you need to learn in order to like build an application, right? But then build an application that you are excited to use, right? Like, and that would have a potential user, right?
Yeah, the boot camp really does force you down a very specific path that may not be best for you. The common question that I typically ask people when they say, "Oh, I want to learn how to code or I want to get a job," is like, "Why do you want to learn to code?" Typically, there's if you ask enough whys down there, it's like, "Well, I really would like to build a mobile app." Well, then you should learn mobile development. Or I really want to make my own video game. Well, maybe Unity and C Sharp is best. Or
Hmm.
I mean, I don't know. If the answer is I don't know, then okay, sure, generic full stack web is probably gonna be the most like broadly applicable. But if you take that step back to first explore different technologies to identify what like excites you, then yeah, I think naturally you will be more successful in learning that technology and ultimately getting that first job for sure.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's why I always kind of give people the advice of building a full stack application, one, to get like the full experience, but then two, to understand which parts did you like figuring out versus not. And then trying to build something that you want to use. So then you as a user are the forcing function of different features or different things. Then it kind of continues down that path of like what you actually like doing. Right. And then when it comes to the job search, you can then say, this is what I like to do. This is what I want to find, right? I'm open to anything within this more defined, realm, right?
And strangely enough, the more focused you are, the actually more available you are to opportunities. If you list like so many different languages on your like LinkedIn, for example, it almost dilutes the perceived effectiveness that you have in any one language.
Yes,
So like if you
100%.
put Java and Python and Node, like those are like three entirely different back end technologies. I might me reviewing your profile, seeing that you have 0 years of experience, I'm going to have very low trust that you're good at any one of those.
Hmm.
But if you're saying, if you're confident in like a tech family, like React, Node, JavaScript, they kind of all work together, then I think that is appropriate to put on your resume because they all kind of reinforce, complement each other, and they aren't, competing.
Hmm.
So then, after you found that passion, that interest that you have, how do you use that to approach the job search?
Yeah. So once you have that clear idea, to your point, it opens up more opportunities because you now have something more specific to focus on, right? When you are generically looking for like, just front end role, full stack, back end role, like and there's no other specific piece of it, right? You're just going to see the same roles pop up on LinkedIn, Google, Indeed, because it's going to be just like the most highly promoted jobs, right? So you're going to see the same things on all those jobs, right? So, but once you start adding in things like mobile or specific industries like healthcare or fitness or automotive or outdoor, right? Like that's immediately going to narrow in and open up different opportunities, right? You can
Uh,
find a job board for almost anything, right? So if you do like thing you're interested in job board, you're going to find a job board that has all these new opportunities that you didn't initially see on Indeed, right?
yeah, and it's not just the technology. I know we're talking about like software engineering here, but maybe you come out of the boot camp, you do a full stack app, and you actually really enjoyed the design of it. Okay, well maybe you go pursue more like a UI UX type focus for your first job. Or maybe you worked with a team as part of your cohort and you really enjoyed like the management of it. Okay, well maybe scrum master, product owner. And maybe you have a management background. Okay, well, maybe product owner is a good first step. Maybe you're very detail oriented and you're collaborative and helping a lot of different people. Maybe like, you're a QA engineer, or for example. It doesn't just have to be software development that your first job in tech. I want to circle back though on the primary focus for this episode of the automation piece, right? So you've identified what you're passionate about. You know the specific roles or the subset of roles, the industry, whatever that you're interested in. Now, how can you kind of relieve some of the burden of your job search by trying to automate some of these processes?
Yeah. So instead of automation, I like to think of compounding, right? So how can we do actions that are compounding so that the more we do it, the more we're going to get out of it, right? And so if we think about the job search, it really simplifies down to two things, right? Either you ask for a job or somebody asks you to do a job, right? That's like the only way for you to like get a new position, right? And so you asking for a job like that, that's applications, that's networking. Someone else asking for you for a job, the key piece is they have to know about you, right? So that's also networking, but also a visibility piece, right? So that's using platforms like LinkedIn and GitHub, right? And when we think about those three things, right? Applications, networking, and your kind of online presence, right? Applications is the only one that has no future benefit for you in your career, right? Whereas networking and visibility online are stuff that's going to help you ongoing in your career. It's not a one-off action, right? So those things are compounding from the day that you start until the day that you stop, right? So thinking about how we're networking in a way that is compounding is also important. A lot of people that I talk to, they're like, "Oh, are you networking?" "Yes, I'm reaching out to hiring managers and recruiters asking for jobs." It's like, that's not networking. That is a verbal job application, you know?
Yeah,
And
it's an
so
aspect of it. That is I'm just thinking about my own story here that really I haven't thought about it from this angle before, but I had about 8 years of experience when I decided I want to pivot from my previous job, which was a programming job, to another one. And even with 8 years of experience, I was actually surprised at how long it took me. It took me about 4 months. Um, I thought I had a great experience, but my LinkedIn wasn't very well maintained. And I had, maybe 300 connections on LinkedIn. So I wasn't getting the type of outreach that I was expecting to have when I turned on my green, open to work banner. So I just want to say I really relate to that, even as an experienced developer, that even with all of the great work I had done, that compounding effect of having that large network to support me in future roles, it wasn't there, and it took me, a few months to build it and be successful there.
Yeah. And I think thinking about the job search as a part of your career growth as opposed to this like separate thing, right? Allows you to think about these actions in a different way, right? So if you think about our career growth, like within a company, right? How do you get promoted, right? You build your network inside the company, you build your exposure, right? So that people know about you and then you have your experience so that you eventually ask for something or they ask for you for it, right? So that's the same thing when it's a job search, is just an external version of that, right? So how do we apply those same things of having that growing network, having that growing visibility so that the experience that we have is a supporter of that so that when we ask for jobs or people ask us for jobs, it's a great fit.
Oh, man, that is so true, and so many people hate that fact, but it is true. It's called, office politics or whatever, but if you do a great thing at work and your boss doesn't know about it, did it really happen? Yeah. I could argue, no. Um So it's hard for those that are the most introverted among us to be able to be their own, self advocate internally and externally, because it's true. It's the people who get promoted are not necessarily the best at what they do. People just like them and they trust them, and they trust them because they know them. And if you are just a nose to the grind, get your work done, and aren't very, sociable or outspoken, people aren't gonna know you well enough to be able to reach out to you, for opportunities. That's a great data point.
Yeah. And I think for like the introverts that are out there, I think I mean, a lot of software engineers I think, are naturally more introverted, right? And I also believe that given the right interests, they become very extroverted, right? And so I think there's still this kind of weird stigma around networking that it's handing business cards at like a conference or something, you know, and like ultimately like networking is just like growing the number of people that you know, right? And if you're doing that in a very organic way around things that you are excited about, right, then like you're doing a great job networking and it doesn't feel weird, right? Because you're just like, oh, I worked with this person on this project. That's networking. I worked with this person on
Yeah.
this project. I talked to this person about like a post they did. Like that's all networking. And it can all be centered around the things that you like doing, right? So it doesn't have to be this like totally separate um, you know, activity that you're doing that's
Mhm.
like, you know, orthogonal to like what you're trying to do with your career, right? It should be all in line and supporting.
Yeah, if done correctly, some people can approach these networking events, meetups or whatever, and be very transactional in it. But the reality is, you're just trying to build relationships. I know for me personally, I help co-organize a meetup group here in the DFW area, and like, it doesn't feel like work. It's just I have an excuse to hang out with my friends every few weeks, and just this last meetup that I was at, there was a woman who was going to be her contract was ending in a few months, and there was another woman whose team was gonna start hiring in a few months. And it's just like, just talk to each other. We're at a meetup on a topic you're both interested in or working on. There you go. Connect with
Mhm.
each other. It's not awkward at all. There's a need. You have a need for a job. They have a need for an employee. And you just talk about it. It did not feel salesy or transactional in any way. Because these individuals had come to multiple meetups beforehand and already had an established relationship.
Mhm. Yeah.
So for compounding the success of your job search, you talked specifically about building your network. I'd like to be as specific as we can so that listeners can walk away with some kind of actionable advice here. So, can you give some kind of tactical, feet on the ground? What websites you go to, what services you use, um, anything actionable for like kind of further define what that networking or that compounding could look like for some individuals.
Yeah, absolutely. A great resource is the book, The 2 Hour Job Search by Steve Dalton. He has a website, the2hourjobsearch.com, the resources. And that book really goes about like, what is the 80 for the 20 in all your job search activities, right? And it really comes down to like focusing on like the networking piece and how to use your network in a very effective way to compound your job search. And one of the foundational principles there is that it's not transactional, right? When you're networking and reaching out to people on LinkedIn specifically, right? You're not reaching out saying like, "Hey, do you have a job for me?" Like, "Hey, can you refer me to this job?" Right? Again, that's not networking. If you have a bunch of first degree connections that you're friends with, that's a great way to use your first degree connection network to be like, "Hey, I'm looking for a job. Hey, I noticed you're hiring. Can I talk to you about it?" Right? Because you have that history with them, you have that background that you can take out that social capital, right? You can kind of like take out of that bucket. So when you're reaching out to your second degree connections, right, you're reaching out to new people, there's nothing there. So you can't start off the conversation saying, "Hey, can you refer me to this job?" It's like, I don't know you, so no, you know? And so it starts off by actually building your network, right? When you reach out to new people, find something that you're generally interested to learn from them, right? They had a similar career path to you. They're working in a technology that you're interested in. They work at a cool company that you want to learn about, right? Focus on building the relationship first, right? It's no secret that you're job searching if your profile says open to work, right? So you don't need to be explicit about that. Start by saying, "Hey, I'd love to learn about XYZ because you do ABC. Can we have a conversation? I'd love your insights," right? Build that connection. And once they know you, then that's something that you can come back to and hopefully get referrals, get experience from. And that ability to go back is that compounding piece, right? So if you're kind of preventing that ability to go back by that first interaction being transactional, then your networking is not compounding. But if you start off all your interactions by building a connection, building a general connection, then you can have a cadence, like say like a monthly cadence or something where you go back and say, all right, what were all the new connections I added last month? Let me like reach out to them again, reconnect, say, "Hey, I loved our conversation about XYZ. Thanks again for your insights. Curious if you had any more like recommendations." Or, "Hey, I noticed, there was this opportunity. Curious your thoughts on it." Right. And then you can keep doing that. And so every time, every month, you have more people that you're reaching back out to and more people that you're reaching back out to. And that's that compounding effect there. Now you have all these people that you're reminding about your job search that's growing and continue to think about you when opportunities present themselves, right? So that's that then compounding network effect that you can have.
Yeah, if you think about it from a programming perspective, you have a single threaded job search where it's just you trying to do all these activities versus now you've created this, network of first degree connections that have some exposure to you. They know that you're looking for work. Now it's a multi-threaded job search where they're all, essentially looking for work for you or circling back with you and they find opportunities because they know you and they trust you. I want to add as well, you talk about building relationships. I liked your approach there. A lot of it I found too is just about giving back. So instead of approaching these conversations being like, hey, what can I get from you? What can you give me? It's just, serving in the community. So I co organize a meetup group. I have no immediate need for a job, but I do hope down the road, if I did want to change careers, all the relationships I've built there will help me land a job because I've given so much to the community. Hopefully, one day, maybe down the road, I can pull from it if I need to. So just try to give back wherever you can to develop
Mhm.
that trust.
Yeah. And I know a big challenge there for especially new developers is what value can I bring, right? Like, what could I give back to this person? And, in truth, sometimes if people want to generally help someone, like they're willing to volunteer their time. So you don't need to necessarily give value from the beginning, right? It's kind of like I will give value in the future when I can, right? But like right now, like I want, I'm taking the opportunity of people that are willing to volunteer their time, right? Another two other approaches, right, is especially if you're reaching out to somebody that is active on LinkedIn, for example, right? engaging on their posts, commenting on their posts, resharing their posts, that helps get their posts more exposure to more people, is a form of giving them value because it's helping to kind of boost their, their social presence, right? So I'm sure like people that are super engaged on your posts, sharing it with their network is helping grow your network. I'm sure you're very appreciative of that. And so you'd be happy to engage with them after they have done that.
It is very
And
true that if they then message me after I've seen them, a while, like I will respond. Typically, my direct messages on LinkedIn, like I'm not able to follow up on every message there,
Mhm.
but I do see your little image icon pop up, and if I recognize you from consistent engagement, I typically will engage there.
Yeah,
That's true.
100%. And I think that's another reason why I'm so bullish on open source software is because that's another place where you can just find a project you're excited about, add value by doing a beginner issue, doing something, and now you've added value to the project. And so if it's a project that you're excited to learn more about and they have a Discord community or some other community that you can engage with, since you've already provided value, you've helped to the project, like you're adding value, you can then ask for a conversation, right? And people might be more interested in engaging with it because like, oh yeah, like this isn't some just another random person in the Discord. Like this is someone that's like been contributing. They clearly are interested in the project. Happy to encourage that, right?
Mhm. And I even t a more concrete example, a little look behind the curtain here. Matthew, I think that's our relationship, right? I think
Yeah.
you were commenting on a bunch of my posts, and then I had a need come up, like, "Hey, I wanna reach out to Matthew. Maybe we have an opportunity to collaborate." And that led to, us talking, right
Yeah,
now.
exactly. Right.
So,
It's like saw you were doing great things, wanted to support, wanted to engage, right? Try and provide value like best that I can. And then when there's
you had
mutual
some great
mutual needs, that's great.
comments. I wanted to have you on here so we could talk about some of the thoughts that you were having.
Yeah.
Look at that. Look at us. We've come so far together,
We're
Matthew.
we're, we're living proof. We're living proof of
That's
of
right,
these
that's right,
tactics, right?
that's right. Well, thank you for your time, Matthew. That's actually all the time that we have for today. So I just want to say thank you for joining and thank you to those that are listening. Hopefully, some of the topics we talked about today, compounding, automation, will help you get your next job in tech. So we will catch you all next time. Thanks for tuning in to the Junior Jobs Podcast. We hope you found today's interview helpful as you navigate your own job search in tech. If you enjoyed the show, please remember to like and subscribe as that helps us reach more developers in need. And don't forget to check the show notes for details on today's sponsor and other job search services that we provide. Thanks for listening and have a great day.